Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod TV World Edition, formerly IBM TV, and I'm here today with my co host, Mark Lee, on our podcast where we talk about global innovation, global affairs, what's going on around the world, and what we can do to build back better and stronger as a nation and world from the COVID-19 pandemic. I have two things today in my monologue I prepared for you this morning. I'm not having as much time these days to prepare as I'm out and about in my new normal, visiting clients and constituents and getting out of my Microsoft Teams and Zoom world. But on that note, once again, I have the first issue I want to talk to about is cybersecurity. On the heels of a recent attack on the Colonial Pipeline, we are now finding that our meat was attacked. JBS, the fifth largest producer of meat in the world, was attacked this weekend with a cyber attack. This was a very scary attack as it affected the supply, possibly consumer prices, and yet another example of how warfare without conventional weapons can be as much of a threat as real warfare. Think of it. Our gas, our meat, our food, our energy, our water, any aspect of our life is in danger from these cyber attacks. We do have evidence that links these attacks to Russia. I do believe it is very important that we come up with this national security strategy to deal with cybersecurity. President Biden has created the Cyber Solarium Commission, a task force to address this, and we hope that he would actually appoint someone on the National Security Council to address cybersecurity. But at the city level and local level, if you're listening to this, you can do your part. Make sure that you're assessing your network. In your city and county budgets, make sure that this is something that's a priority. Provide adequate training in terms of emails or phishing so you know not to click links that would disrupt your network. Make sure that you back up your data, save your passwords, have your data backed up somewhere to the cloud. So in the event of a cyber attack and you are in the government or you're in a business, you can continue your operations for your customers, for your constituents. It is very, very important, folks, that we do this. We'll be talking more about this when we bring on Rex Lee, and we encourage you to watch his show, Cyber TV, where he talks about these issues. My closing monologue, and we're going to talk about it more tomorrow, is Pride Month. President Biden issued a proclamation on celebrating the rights of LGBT community. And in the last few months, he's made some significant attempts to restore their rights. The fact that we can treat them as equal as Americans with rights the same as anybody. One of the things he's done is he's ended the Trump ban on transgenders and LGBTQ not entering the military. He's ending discrimination across the board against any group based on their sexual orientation or gender. And he continues to commit that he will do everything he can to make sure that this community feels included and that they are treated under the law as Americans, equal Americans with the same rights as anybody else. The final thing I'll remember is to just look back at the AIDS pandemic 41 years ago. In 1981, actually, the first case was diagnosed. And if you remember, I was in college in the 90s. AIDS was something that was very taboo. There were many, many people that denied that AIDS even existed. In fact, what I find amazing is President Ronald Reagan didn't first address AIDS until 1987, but the first case was diagnosed in 1981. But it was leaders like Magic Johnson, Rock Hudson, even the teen phenom Ryan White, who brought awareness of this pandemic. And even Tony Fauci, who at that time was in infectious disease control, went on to become the director of disease prevention for the United States and still is in that role. As we celebrate the LGBT community, let us look at the challenges that we faced, but let's also look at the great work ahead of us to make sure that we're doing everything to end not only racism and racial bias towards minorities of color, but racism and bias against those of the LGBT community. We love you, our brothers and sisters. You are equal to us, and we are here for you. So let's kick off the show, and we'll talk more about LGBTQ issues this month on Pride Month. I am now going to bring in Mark Lee. Thank you very much.
No problem. And I brought some friends with me, brought Sasha Starr, and also brought the great boss, Mr. Nick Palveda, here
Mr. Mark.
as well. And by the way, that was a very powerful monologue. And I remember those early cases of AIDS and all of that. Actually, one of the people that was featured on an early magazine cover was somebody that was involved in the family radio station. So I
Well,
do remember Warren, who had passed away, and he was actually had left the station at that time. But I do remember that he was on one of the covers of one of the magazines and things along that line. So definitely that
well,
was a
I
victim
hope
that
you.
I knew.
Well, it's great, and I got so tired yesterday at 9. I go to bed at 9:01 every day. I just hit the pillow and I'm out like a light. And right before I went to bed, I thought about what I was gonna say, and then when I woke up in the morning, it just came to me. So I hope you all like the monologue, but I want to start with Sasha Starr and then go down the road. But let's talk real quickly about cyber attack because this is unbelievable. I mean, first we had, and then we're going to talk about Pride Month a little bit, President Visit to Greenwood, and some other things going on in the world. But Sasha, we had the Colonial Pipeline in America attacked, affected gases, lines, everything. Now they're attacking our meat processing. As I mean, what's going on here? I mean, this is really really scary. I mean, it's almost as if I made that point that we think warfare is when people are gunned down and died, but when you could knock out entire economies with this kind of stuff. So what do you think?
Now you have to figure out what's worse, when a few people are dying or when all economy is going down. Take your choice. However, unfortunately, I'm not in charge of these highly skilled and talented Russian hackers. And obviously, they're doing fantastic jobs. And unlike certain people on our panel, I'm not strong believer that there will be a better relationship between U.S. and Soviet Union or Russia, whatever it's now called. And again, remember this movie Independence Day when they asked that creature, "What is it? Do you want?" And the creature replied, "To kill you." That's exactly what's happening. Please.
Who
So
kill you?
you can meet with Mr. Putin 75 times and you can do many wonderful things, but the nature of things remains the same. In fact, it could have been worse. And as I said before, US had a window of opportunity from about 1950 to 1958. He did not use that. Now you have to used to live. People are get used to certain things. For example, let's say somebody, God forbid, got blind, right? It's horrible. But it's in months, 2, 3 months, people getting adjusted and they learn how to live being blind and so on, and life goes on until the person will ultimately die one day. Same thing here. You have to learn how to remember Doctor Strangelove. How I started to love the bomb and stop worrying about it. Same thing here. Just you get used to it. That there will be a colossal disruptions and destructions and all kinds of things. It's just part of your life, unless you're prepared to take things under your control and do something about it, including what John Kennedy did during the Cuban crisis. Remember? That's what takes a lot of courage and chutzpah to do something like that. No, you don't want to do that, then learn to live with this new regime and the new reality.
Mark
Okay?
Lee, what do you? Before we get to Nick, what are your thoughts about this recent attack on the meat?
I mean, if you're going to attack any country, and I think anybody knows that, the best way to go is to try to attack the food supply. I think that that's a common strategy in just about any war tactic. I think Nick would agree with me that if we study the history of war, it's usually that you try to go for the food supply or the food chain and all of that. That's just something that's been going on through the history of wars. So I'm not surprised that meat was attacked, just like I wasn't overly surprised way back in 9/11 that fiscal institutions were attacked, because definitely fiscal institutions and our food supply is a lot of times what is the I won't say the weak point, but it's the point of entrance if you're going to try to dismantle something or if you're going to try to cause havoc. So definitely, I was not surprised at all. But I'd love to hear if Nick is agreeing with my assessment of the wars of history. That oftentimes we would go for the food supply or the water supply.
Yes, absolutely. Nick, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, as an avowed capitalist, of course, I bought my stock FireEye when the first cybersecurity thing hit. Sasha, I figured there was going to be another one, and that ultimately the stock would go up. Although it's down a little bit today, which I was a little shocked because this was good news for people that are buying cybersecurity stocks, is to have cybersecurity attacks by the Russians. I think it's going to continue, and so I think cybersecurity stocks are going to do quite well because we're going to have to improve our defenses. In terms of my friend Vladimir, okay, yeah, Sasha's right. He's left over from the Cold War. Until he moves on, the Russian-U.S. relationships will probably not be very, very good at this point in time. He spent 16 years at the KGB. He did go to law school, though. He actually got his law degree at Leningrad.
So he's your colleague, right?
Yeah, he's a colleague. He's a man of the cloth. Okay.
I heard he's a great swimmer too, isn't that true?
Yeah. I mean, you know, overall as a person,
he's a great swimmer and hockey player. He loves chess.
Yeah, he loves chess. He is the ultimate Renaissance man, the man of many talents. Steve Seagal's friend, by the way, in case you didn't know.
He is really fit. I mean, he looks just
he's an honorary citizen.
Not an ounce of body fat.
Yeah, and he's a partisan Russian left over from the Cold War, basically.
Is it true that he drinks vodka at lunch in the Kremlin?
I would have no doubts he does, you know. But the thing is, because he's in such good shape, he'll probably be with us for a long time, and the relationships will be like this for quite some time. I mean, it's going to be very challenging. But let's put that way.
Let me talk real quickly. I want to dive in before. Well, Mark Lee, what are your thoughts about cyber attacks, real quick, and then I want to talk about Soviet Union.
No, going to the Soviet Union, I was actually, like I said, I definitely am concerned about cyber attacks. I think that anybody is. We know that technology is going to be the new war front and all of that. So I'm not surprised at these cyber attacks. And I expect, like Nick said, that we'll be seeing more and more of these. I did just come up with a great solution, though, in terms of like how we can create a new detente and everything. Nick, don't we have a master chess player that is part of our team? So can't we just send him over to Russia to go ahead and beat Putin, and then that will end this whole thing? So I'm thinking we just send Sasha over. Thing done.
Yeah, we'll send Sasha over, but I'm not sure how well that's going to work because Sasha left there for a reason, which are reasons that we're not going to discuss.
First of all, if you want to really go there, first of all, don't bother to buy a return ticket. You might as well buy one-way
ticket.
That's good enough.
Your money. No, I had a return ticket. I got my visa. I went over there to St. Petersburg. I spent 10 days hanging out there, and it was a good time. This was when they were the relationships were actually pretty good. I'd love to go back, but with the relationships the way it is, because I did have to go to the Gulag and meet with the police, and it was kind of a scary experience because you had to go underground into these prison cells that are like unbelievable, that no one can hear you or see you, and that we had a hard time communicating. But I can see where this could be a very challenging place to work in. The people were really nice and friendly, which is not unusual with a lot of countries that are like that. It's just that if you had to deal with the government, then you have a real challenging problem. Fortunately, most of the stuff that we dealt with was not with the government. It was like the Petra Palace, the Hermitage, the Peter and Paul. I mean, it was all, the touristy stuff. And they still get a lot of tourists over in St. Petersburg, and I think they're going to continue, except because of the relationship with Europe and the United States and this and Belarus, it's challenging to really want to go over there because there are a lot of options where to go. You know?
And I think, and anyway, before we go on to Russia, and then I want to talk about Pride Month a little bit, first of all, if you are listening, I was really serious. I think that we need to make sure that governments are doing cybersecurity assessments, that we're doing adequate training. I just got an email yesterday that said important tax information. And, I don't want to open up the email because I'm afraid even if I click it, is it
Oh,
going to
right.
stop my
Yeah,
system?
it's probably a scam. It's probably
Yeah,
a
but
ransomware
what do you
scam.
do with that? Because that email is sitting there and it's so tempting to
Okay,
want to click it, so you just
the-
ignore it.
no, you ignore it. You delete it. Okay, the IRS will never send you something through the internet. So the best thing if you get something important tax information, delete it.
Okay.
Okay, it is a scam. It could be ransomware. It could be bad. And what they were saying is that most ransomware that takes place is because you invite them into your house. In other words, you open up an email that they can go into your house and take it over. And that's the real problem. So when you see things like that, especially from the IRS, delete it. They will never send you correspondence
I think,
through an email. Never. It
and I
all
think,
goes through mail.
and just to talk about the U.S. Soviet relationship, and I saw many years ago President Putin on 60 Minutes, and it was a very interesting interview.
He
And
did a great job, I
yeah,
thought.
he did a good job. But one of the things he said, and I'll have to eventually pull the interview and go review it, but he just said, how would you feel in the United States if you ended up not winning the Civil War and all these states just separated and you had this big country and then all of a sudden it was splintered and different because it's too easy for you to come in and say you're doing this, but you need to look at it from my perspective and the fact that so it was sort of interesting to sort of see that Russia has been there thousands of years, a lot of history there, and it's not, I think, as easy as everyone says being a leader. And Sasha, you're from there, right? So a lot of change, a lot of you know it's just been it's hard, diplomacy, to try to put yourself in the perspective of the person leading that nation, right?
Hmm.
It's very different, very difficult, right? But he
Yeah.
made some good points, I thought.
Well, Russia is a very, very big problem, and they are slowly taking over US from the military point of view. They've developed a lot of supersonic new arms. It's a new type of arms which US doesn't have. And the reason that US doesn't have is that it's a very bureaucratic situation where you have to retain services of General Dynamics or General Electric or some other Raytheon, some big corporations, and you have to negotiate the budget for that, and you have to, first of all, even before you do all that, you have to really understand the necessity of having that, because if you're not there, then why would you negotiate with any of these corporations and ask for a budget? So first of all, your brains have to be directed towards the real danger from Russia developing. And by the way, China is getting some of that stuff too. So they're going way ahead in the new class of rockets and sophisticated arms which you don't have, and just it doesn't mean that they have to even use it against you. They just can threaten to
Hmm.
use it, and because the damage from this new armaments is so great without using nuclear bombs.
Hmm.
You see, the beauty of it is you don't need to use nuclear bombs. You can still use them, but sort of if you have any morals, and actually morals was the only one thing that kept us not to start war against Russia from 1950 to 1958. Only morals, because technologically, militarily, they were so superior that it's not even fun. They just could lose
But,
a
but,
job in 2 weeks.
but what happens if they did, Sasha? What are we going to do? Take over Russia and
No, no, no,
manage
no.
100
The
million
war,
Russians? I
no,
mean,
no, 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 Nick. The war would never happen. It's like, remember my story about the war between Ireland and
oh yeah,
Soviet
right. The war
Union.
with
No,
Japan.
yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
so
Yeah.
this is the same thing. All it takes a telephone call and say that, okay, look at what we've got. We've got this and this, that and that. The war will start in 48 hours unless You'll do this and this and three, four little things here and there just to show your respect.
Right.
Hey,
Show that
Sasha,
you are
Sasha.
nice. Now
Yeah,
we
hey,
can talk to you.
no, but Sasha, you say it was morals that stopped us. I actually think that it was something even more basic than that, called the law of survival, meaning that most people and most species, I won't even say most humans, most species like to stay around and like to survive for as long as they can. So I think that it was fear of the entire eradication of the planet that stopped most of the wars from happening.
Listen very carefully to what I said. I'm saying about the window of opportunity from exactly 1950 to 1958. At 1958, the window closed. Now we are going into era of mutual assured destruction. That's why that was no longer an option from 59 and on, and it's not an option now as well. But even then, all you do just a telephone call, describe the situation how it is, give the options of doing certain things to avoid the horrible disaster, and that's it. That's all what you would need. One of the things what you would ask, for example, to completely give up the nuclear armaments, all the bombs what they are developing, destroy all of them in next 48 hours, and American observers will be there to make sure that it's exactly what happened, and then you have to report on all new developments in your production of arms and everything. So you could basically get it all without any war, because especially in 1953, in early 53, when Stalin died, and there was complete disarray, and there is a story that actually all those people like Khrushchev and others, they actually killed him to get rid of him and save their lives because it was about time for them to go all to jail as a traitors and enemies of people.
No, I hear
So,
what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, Sasha, and I agree with you totally. As long as we're talking about that whole concept of mutually assured destruction and all of that. Hey, Nick, I got two questions to ask you. One that is somewhat jokingly, and the other one I'm being very serious about because it's something that involves the network and all of that. But the joking one is, I'm waiting for you to call your good friends, those aliens, to come and help us grab the nuclear weapons and take them up into space, and then it'll become a moot point because they'll be up in space and we can all go back to Shangri-La and having a kind of paradise and everything. But my serious question is, I know that the network started off with us talking about COVID and the COVID
That's right.
pandemic and everything along that lines. One of the things that we're seeing is a lot of America is very happy. We're getting out there and all of that. But I remember back in last year, we used to look at these graphs and you used to bring them up and show them all the time about how other countries were doing. And it looks
Right.
like the other countries are not doing as well now because
Right.
Malaysia is barred people from venturing more than 6 miles from their home.
Yep.
Nepal has got 40% of coronaviruses. And there are a number of other countries where these outbreaks are taking place in Asia and South America. So what can we do to help these companies? I mean, these countries, I said companies, but I meant countries when this is going on. Even Thailand and Taiwan,
Mhm.
which kept the virus in check for much of 2020, have closed schools and night spots in the face of a new wave. And I'm even hearing that from our good friend Shaquille's place of
Yep.
Australia, that they're even having incidences as well.
Yeah, I think they made another mistake on the back end. This is really very strange. They did good on the front end in containing the virus, but it's like they did good in the opening. Sasha will appreciate that, but they flubbed the end game. What was the end game? The vaccine. Okay. For some reason, it always boggles me, Mark, that Japan did not make a deal with Pfizer, J&J, or AstraZeneca or somebody to get their people vaccinated. So now they're going to host the Olympics because the Olympic Committee is putting pressure on them to host it, but their people are old and not vaccinated. It's creating a real problem over in Japan. But a
It's
lot of these
scary.
countries, it's scary. A lot of these countries that did well in shutting down, containing the coronavirus,
Yes, that's a great point,
they
Nick.
they
That's
they
a
they
great point.
they did well in the opening, but now here's the end game. They need to be
And
vaccinated, and apparently they don't want to pay Pfizer, they don't want to pay Moderna, they don't want to pay anybody. But it creates a big problem for them because the coronavirus isn't going to go away because they don't want to pay Pfizer. It ain't going to go away. So they're stuck on the
and
back end.
it's funny that you mentioned that there is a pure irony here, right? Sheer
Mm-hmm.
irony is that exactly 1 year ago today, if you were watching the news networks, everybody was talking about, how even Fareed Zakaria was talking about how the countries that had tight restrictions, like
Right.
Taiwan and Singapore, and these countries were doing so well with controlling the virus by quarantining and everything, and even Germany for that matter, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
the U.S., we tend to be a little looser in the United States. We were
Yeah.
on the beaches, infection rates were high. Here we are 1 year later, close to having 200 million Americans vaccinated.
Right.
Really, I can say that for the first time in a year and a half, I believe this pandemic is behind us.
Yeah,
I'm,
it is.
I'm seeing restaurants fill. I
Yep.
feel like I did about 2 years ago. But why is that? Well, I think part of it is that government resources deployed efficiently. I know you're going to disagree with the 6 trillion, but just in terms of vaccination, making it a priority that you
Yeah.
had to get your vaccine, you hit the nail on the head. America focused on vaccination. We were able to get the drugs produced, released, and distributed, and we have to give Trump credit for Operation Warp
Right.
Speed,
Yeah.
right? He did do that. We have to give him credit. But I think Biden did a good job coming in as the new president and setting up,
Making sure it got done. Yeah.
making sure it got done, right?
Yeah.
So, way to go, America.
Yeah,
I mean,
we actually did predict this over a year ago on the IBM TV network, that there was going to be, first of all, there's going to be, the U.S. is going to flub it, which they did. I didn't know they'd flub it as bad as they did, but they did, the opening. Then we're going to have better treatments, which still even exist today. The treatments are getting better if you did get COVID-19. And then the vaccine will come out, but it was going to be a year from now. So we figured we had a year of doing programming before people go, I don't want to watch programs anymore on, Vimeo or anything. And then the thing is, the vaccine, then we're going to be back to normal, which looks like, which is going to happen here. What we didn't predict was the other countries that shut down, that didn't have it, were going to not get vaccinated, and causing them a lot of problems, because because it's just like the American Indians. The reason they died, our Native Americans, wasn't because of the wars. We wiped out 70 million because of smallpox.
Yeah.
They died because of what they call the European diseases, diphtheria. They had no protection. And I'm talking about the Native Americans. You go, well, we wiped them out. Well, here's how we wiped them out. It wasn't, hey, we went to war with the Indians. We met with the Indians. We had diphtheria. We had malaria. We had, we had rubella. We had smallpox. Smallpox being the big one. They had no resistance. They caught it, and it just wiped them all out. I mean, big time. Well, what happens is some of these countries, like all the ones that we were bragging about, Japan, Malaysia, Taiwan, they didn't get the vaccine. They didn't get the vaccine. So they have no resistance to this at all. And so what happens, they can't do anything. They have to stay in their own shell. Or if they open up their country, like Japan's going to do with the IOC, they're in a world of hurt, because they could have a big mess on their hands with the Olympic coming to Tokyo this year. So watch this. This is going to be great news and great theater, Mark, is the Olympics going to Tokyo, and all these people from around the world coming into their city in a country that has, a less than a 5% vaccination rate.
disaster. It's a disaster.
And the oldest country in the world. The oldest.
Sasha Star has a point. Sasha?
Yeah.
I'm wondering about this Olympics issue. First of all, nobody is making you to travel to Japan to watch this Olympics. You can watch it on TV, and most people probably will. Now, I don't believe that there will be so much interaction between Japanese and nationals who live in Japan and sportsmen who are coming from different countries for their sports. I don't believe that there will be.
There better not be.
But even if they wanted to interact, there's no interaction, because normally they're staying in special places, and there are guards and so on. So people like sport fans, for example, Japanese, who want to just talk to some sportsmen and take their autograph or anything. I don't think that it will be even possible. So while there is no interaction, I don't believe that there is so much risk really, especially if the rate without vaccination, the rate in Japan is quite low from
Yeah.
the rate of people who got the disease. So it's not really a big deal. I believe that they shouldn't hold this Olympics,
Right, I
and
agree.
it would be better too. However, if we are talking about sports, there is something amazing happened in French Open. I'm following
Oh
French
yeah,
Open.
yeah.
Right.
We're
Yeah,
gonna
that
talk.
was amazing.
Absolutely
Let's,
incredible thing.
let's talk about that now. We're going to talk about Pride Month at the end, but this is a perfect example to talk about controversy or big issues. So let me take a stab at it as a former college tennis player, a semi-pro tennis player. That I tell you, I was literally shocked at this news. Okay, let me just say that for I started thinking to myself when she won that last championship that she might be the next Serena, right? Because I wanted Serena to win one more to break the record. And I just said, man, Osaka's just at another level, right? I mean, she was just so much better than the other women. And but let's talk about mental health. I mean, let's go back and look at the facts. She's 21 years old, right? She's training her butt off, and then she becomes a player, beats Serena Williams, her idol. We know that whole thing was a fiasco. The way she won that might have been traumatic in its own right. Remember that, where Serena had the meltdown, and then all of a sudden she's a star, making the highest paid athlete in the world. So I'm going to start with Sasha. Sasha, what's at issue here? Is the issue that we have to address mental health of all athletes at all levels, or is the issue that when a young kid becomes a professional, should the governing bodies spend more time making sure that they're okay? Because in this instance, her pet peeve was with the press, and she didn't want to deal with the press. But to play the Grand Slams, you have to deal with the press. But instead of saying we're going to work with you, they sent her a letter saying, "Well, we cannot invite you." What are your thoughts about this issue?
You see, the problem with this that there are several issues all come together into one. There are several. Her mental health, agree. Her being half black, half Asian, Japanese American athlete. Yes, there is a big deal of that. I'll tell you later why. There is another issue is that uh, regardless how you feel about certain things, there are some contractual obligations. Maybe Nick knows something about that. That if you're signing contract with the Grand Slam organizers, who, by the way, all of them are white men. The tournament organizers are white, so they are therefore obviously they all have to be punished, they all have to be put in jail, they all have to explain why they're racist or so on. But that's a different story. So now the girl who actually became famous, she's a good player, no doubts about that. She already made $50 million so far while being 20 years old. So she's not doing that bad. Even if she is not normal and she has some mental problems or so on, there are a huge supply of mental clinics, doctors, professors, and anybody else. You can go for 2 years and just to cure her problem. If it's curable now, maybe it's not curable. So then, but she still wants to continue to make $50 million a year. Well, then she either have to renegotiate her contract. But you see, she took a point that no, it's okay. I'll pay $50,000 fine, and I can continue to play. And after each match, I'll pay you $50,000, and she will probably take a couple $1 million prize in the tournament. That's not a big deal, except one. If the Grand Slam organizers, again being all white men, if they would agree to that, then how they prevent from other players black and white and men and women and whoever they are, to say the same thing. Okay, that's fine. Here's your $15,000. Actually, they don't even have to pay $15,000. It will be taken from their price. So they will get their price minus 15,000. Not a big deal for these people. Okay. So now tournament organizers, now they are getting completely different deal. They negotiated a huge prizes for the sportsmen. Why they're paying them so much money, it's beyond me, but that's how they think it works out. That's fine. But the problem now is that with her and other sportsmen, will take the same stand. Now they're not getting the same deal what they're bargaining for, because they got the deal when not only they will play a match, but also they will do the short interview press conference after the match. So that's a package deal, because the interview after match press conference is a big deal. A lot of people are watching that. A lot of people don't care about tennis, but they want to see a person, how she talks, what is it about her, so on. And with her particularly, she used media to her advantage, because she was promoting Black Lives Matter and all these political statements. She did that. So now, when probably people told her to slow down in that direction and so on, and she has nothing more to say. So she decided, okay, I don't need these press conferences. Here is your $15,000. Not so fast. Okay.
Yes, I mean, Mark, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, and then we're going to end with Nick, who's also a tennis player. Mark, what are your thoughts about this whole issue? And Sasha, great points.
Great points
I
that
used to
Sasha
play
was
tennis
making,
too.
but I would actually counter to some degree because one of the things that I know, having two nephews that have, been competitive to some degree in some of these pickup sports, but I mean, they're doing it for fun because they're under that age range of, they'll turn 12 and 13 on this particular year in about a month or two. But for the most part, they were playing soccer and football, and I think a couple of other sports. They might have even got into lacrosse just because it was a fun activity. But they say that and there was actually an article even before Miss Osaka that said that they were wondering about the impact of the pandemic and the impact of youth sports and depression, because definitely they say that by age 13, up to 70% of children have actually dropped out of organized sports. And part of that is
Yeah.
because as you get into the more competitive sports, that's when depression starts playing into a factor. So I mean, depression is something that you hear about even among our college basketball players, our college football players, and a number of others. As a matter of fact, one of the articles I was reading was saying that for young athletes competing at a national and international level, anxiety and depression were 20 to 45% higher in some cases than those in other kind of control groups. And actually, Sasha will be glad to hear this, that over there in Canada, some Canadian swimmers and IPOP 68% met the criteria for depression. So definitely a lot of folks get into these sports and they start getting into this whole competitive mindset. And then, if you're not meeting the goals that you set for yourself, because a lot of times it's goals that you set for yourself and everything, then you start facing these depression things. And a lot of times, as Nick loves to point out, and I thoroughly agree with him, I brought it up on a number of our shows, and not just the World Edition, but a number of other things. We don't do a great job of teaching folks how to prepare for these things, including how to deal with it in our school system. So a lot of times they have no clue as to how to deal with this when they are getting involved in these competitive sports. So I think that that's something that the school systems around the country, and I would argue around the world, need to deal with. Because I mean, that's going to be some very intense training and all of that. I mean, I remember, when I ran track, and I did run track. I can't tell now from the stomach and everything, but when I ran track, I made the track team for a very simple reason. I had a hard trainer that ran you and ran you and ran you some more. And if you survived, you made the team. So that's how I managed to make the team, because I wasn't even that good. I was a Charlie Brown
Yeah.
type runner and everything, but I was able to be a survivor. So, sometimes surviving is how you make teams. But a lot of folks aren't even able to deal with that. And a lot of times they get very caught up in we can call it the glory of the sport, but the glory does have some other aspects as well. And I think that our school systems need to do a better job of addressing that and helping the kids cope with this as they get involved.
Nick, I've got some closing thoughts on this, but Nick, what are your thoughts as a tennis?
Oh, okay. First of all, phobias are real. Okay. In other words, the thing is, people think they aren't real. I know I had a phobia of flying, believe it or not. And I got over it because I flew every week for 10 years to do presentations all over the United States. But still, it was a real phobia. And a lot of people have phobias of flying. I can see them on airplanes. Another big phobia people don't like to talk about is, believe it or not, speaking in front of public. It's huge. Half the population of the United States, I mean, you guys don't have it, but I'm saying that in front of a camera or in front of a stage are scared to bloody death to speak in front of a camera or on stage. And so the thing is, I never had that because I did public speaking for 10 years all over the country, but people are actually afraid of that. So she's a sports figure. And Marshawn Lynch was another one. He was afraid to death to get in front of a camera and speak in front of a bunch of people. They're just scared. It is a phobia. It's a real problem that I believe she actually has, and a lot of people do. But here's what's going on behind the scenes. It's these greedy capitalists. That's what's the real problem. Now, what is the greed that's driving this? I'll tell you what the greed is. It's about money. What happened is the producers of these television shows realize the ratings go up if they get the people that are playing the game to get on television and talk about a little while. That's the real thing. So they build it in the contracts. It's mandatory that you come and speak afterwards because it boosts our rating, and the greedy capitalists make more money because more eyeballs watch because she's on TV. Seriously, that's what it is. It's all greed,
and I can suggest something.
Greed driven.
Nick, I can
they
suggest
don't need
something.
to get on television.
Hold on, I can suggest something. They can take
Greedy
this
TV.
close. Yeah, it's greediness, number one. So they can take that clause out of the contract
Correct.
and reduce prices about 90%. So now instead of $3 million, your first price will be $300,000. And you don't have to speak on television.
That's
Keep
fine.
your $300,000.
Right. Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you, bye. That's it. But they decided, and they cannot do to some people pay 3 million prizes, and the other person wins first prize and gets only $300,000.
Yeah, but
not fair, right?
she's already made a statement. You can take your greedy prize and shove it. I think she did the right thing. You know, telling these greedy capitalists to take their prize funds and go shove it.
The organizers of all Grand Slam to kill that possibility that after signing a contract, the person can say, okay, keep your $15,000. They want to kill it because it will destroy all concept.
It doesn't have to be the part of the contract. I mean, see, this is totally unfair, Sasha.
Renegotiate whole thing. Renegotiate. Say those people who want to give interviews, they do.
Sure.
Maybe they should be paid for an interview. Maybe
exactly.
$5 million. Okay, give us a 20 minutes interview. Here's $5 million.
Okay, look. If the greedy capitalists want to pay bonuses for people speaking, that's fine. Then let the greedy capitalists do that, make them come out of pocket. But what they're doing is totally wrong by punishing a player who, look, if I go play in a chess tournament, all I do is play in chess. I don't want to speak to the cameras afterwards. Okay, I should have the right, but I don't have the bargaining power to have the right to put it in my contract. All I'm going to do is play, go home, I'm done. I don't want to talk to you. Okay? But because the bargaining power is
renegotiate. Nick, but there is always possibility to renegotiate contract.
That's right.
If one person doesn't like it, but she didn't renegotiate.
No, because it's what they call an adhesion contract. It was the French Open going, "This is the way it is, or get lost." And you know what she told him, rightfully so. And I give her a lot of credit. Go stick it. And she took her little tennis racket.
Wonderful. And what's happened that because Grand Slam is a world organization with the rights to all Grand Slam tournaments, not just French, it's also Wimbledon, it's also US Open, and it's also Australian Open. So they issue immediately, which was the right thing to do, that she is going to be out of all tournaments, not just French Open.
That's what I'm saying.
All tournaments.
You know what, Sasha? That is wrong. This is wrong by tennis. This is a greedy large worldwide capitalist organization. If
They
you look
want
at
to
it, this is
prevent
the reason why there
unemployment.
was a revolution in Russia. Is because you got greedy capitalist organizations that say, well, you're out of all tournaments. And what I think is what the people need to do is not support watching tennis because of that. They should not have the right to tell us who we can watch and who we can't watch. If I want to watch Osaka, just play tennis. I don't want to listen to her garbage. I should have the
Well,
right to do it
she,
because
she can she
you
can
greedy
organize.
international capitalists. It's even worse. You're telling me they're doing it as a monopoly. They should be sued for antitrust. Where are the lawyers, buddy? Sue these
Well,
people.
somebody can
Law.
sue them, or somebody can organize a parallel Grand Slam number
Sure.
2, or as this is gold Grand Slams, that will be
Yeah.
a silver
Well,
Grand Slam. Let somebody
Hey,
do
No,
that.
you're
Osaka, wait a
you're
minute.
doing
But the
Hey, Nick,
you're
contract
demonstrating
obligation is
you're demonstrating
without
how
contract obligations, you cannot
evil the
do it.
tennis organizers are. How
hey,
evil
Nick,
the tennis
Nick and
organizers are.
Sasha,
They
just
are
hey,
all very greedy people. They're devils,
They're
but
greedy and they're evil.
they're evil, of course, 100%. I would kill them right away if I would think they would be somewhere around. But
Thank
you
you,
know
Sasha.
what? The contract obligations still rule the
I
world.
know. That's
And
the reason.
so the
even
corporations rule the world. But
your,
hey, Nick and
what's her
Sasha, hold on
name?
one second.
That's the reason you have antitrust
Yeah,
laws.
hey, but one thing I was going to say, because you called it her talking garbage and everything, but I am actually a fan, and y'all know this, of what I call activist athletes or activists in general. So I
What
have
is
no
it?
problem with her using her platform to deal with mental health or dealing with the whole race issue as well. So I have no problem. I actually commend her for doing that. So you said you don't want her to talk garbage, but I actually commend her for coming out there and using the platform because, before she became a tennis star, nobody would have known who Naomi Osaka was or even cared. So she has a
So,
powerful
so
platform to use.
I
here
got it.
is a devious little kid against greedy capitalist system. So she's very skillfully using her power to draw attention to
Good for
herself,
her.
and she's talking about Black Lives Matters and all the other stuff. But if she would talk only, I'm pretty sure people explained to her to shut up about all those issues, and she did. So now she can talk about tennis as much as she wants, but she's not interested to talk about tennis. Oh, now she has some kind of a what is it, disease or some kind of sickness, whatever it is. Go. You have enough money to find a good doctor and then treat yourself. Now, another thing is renegotiate your contract, not only with French Open, with
If
other
you can,
organizations.
because you just told me this evil tennis organization has total control as a monopoly power over all tennis around the world.
Well, I'll tell you what
Yeah.
I'm going to do, guys. I've got to chime off a little early today, so I wanted to just close out on this issue. Talk to you about. I want to open it up to talk about LGBT and pride, but you can continue with this issue if we want
But
to today.
actually,
Let me close out.
Steve,
See, I think this issue is far more important than LGBT issue.
no, but actually the two can be
Yeah,
tied
these young
together.
people, they're going to be
No,
around tomorrow.
Steve, actually the two can be tied together because one of the most powerful proponents of the LGBT community actually came out of the tennis world and she used that power to make her statements. And I'm talking about Martina Navratilova. So she
Yeah.
actually used that to
Well,
discuss the issue.
We'll finish the program with this issue today because I think it's relevant. I am going to try to bring on Katrina Adams and Andy Andrews, who's Andy Andrews is a former pro player, lives in Raleigh. Katrina Adams is a friend of mine. She's the former president of USTA. So I'm going to reach out to both of them to see whether they might want to come on the show this week and join us on Pod TV, IBM TV, Pod TV. Yep. Okay, so I'll do that. I'll just close out with this. I think where we are today moving forward is that we don't know whether she's going to play Wimbledon. Novak Djokovic has reached out to her along with many, many pro players. If I were an advisor to Osaka, I would actually have her reach out to Andre Agassi because we often forget that Andre Agassi reached number one in the world and then had a mental breakdown when he lost to Sampras. And if you read his book, he never recovered from that. He married Brooke Shields, was in a terrible divorce, got addicted to meth, had all kinds of problems. And then we found out when you read his book that he was actually always depressed and never happy. I think for me, I never played at the pro level, but I can tell you that I'm 50 years old and I can only remember maybe one day in my life where I've relaxed. It drives my family crazy. It's almost not OCD, but I'm so driven and competitive that I don't know how to just turn the devices off and shut down. So sometimes I work 14 hours a day, and even my own family, when I'm eating, they have to make me sit down, and it's actually had an effect on my mind. And I'm in denial because I keep saying, well, everything's going to be okay. So what if she was the same way, where
Sure.
she wasn't prepared for this? And
Yeah.
so my closing thought is, there's a division of IMG called Game On, which is led by a guy named Steve Shenbaum. And what they do there in Florida is they actually train athletes. You go through simulations. I've actually visited them before. You go through, so they actually train Sampras because they were very afraid. He's another one that's very introverted, has a real problem talking to people.
Steve, where's the tennis union in all this?
I don't know.
Or do they even have one? Because Reagan destroyed all the unions, taking labor into the turn of the other century. Okay, because the unions are the only thing that are powerful enough they actually can stand up against, obviously, a monopolistic, evil capitalist organization.
Well,
So what union position is? Okay, guys, good news.
Well, in other words, the tennis players should say, look, she should have the right to go play tennis.
No, Nick.
Or we go on strike. There is no Wimbledon.
Okay,
Mark,
guys, I have a good news for you.
Thank you very much. Great show.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow, okay?
Excellent. Okay, so the union has to go to their members and say, guys, we have great news for you. Remember all these little contracts you signed with these organizers? Null and void. There are no longer contracts. Anybody who wants to give interview, go ahead and do it. Those who don't want to give interview or press conference, you just don't do it. Shove it, and that's it. The end of story. It's a union has legal power to do so.
Well,
Nick, just really quickly, and we can still continue discussing this. While you were asking that question, me and my good friend Google decided to look it up. Guess what? There is a professional tennis players association, and guess what? It's an association of male tennis players, founded by the tennis players Novak, and I'm not going to butcher this Russian last name, and Vasek, which is another Russian last name as well that I'm not going to try to attempt to butcher. But apparently the group represents single players in the top 500 and doubles players in the top 200 of the ATP ranking. But as I look down at the folks that were backing the Professional Tennis Players Association, I'm seeing names like Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, Andy Murray, but I'm not seeing any women. So I think that there's probably no women's association. So that's part of the problem right there.
There might not be. And see that's that is part of the problem, and it's totally unfair bargaining power because you have one person, and the only reason she's getting any attention, she's number 2 in the world. Seriously, otherwise they'd stomp on her and spit her out for the next dollar that they could make in profit, which is all this is about. And it makes it even worse. I didn't tell Steve how bad it really is. It's worse than you think. Why is it worse? The media is in bed with tennis. In other words, they put on these tennis events all the time through television. The last thing they want to do is point the finger at the organizers. So they may not bring out the real problem that exists in the evil tennis world, which Sasha was great enough to bring out. I had no idea it was a monopolistic organization that dominates. It's similar to what you have in chess with your friend Carlson, who's dominating the world chess organization and cutting everybody out. So now you just have.
So somebody will sue him sooner or later, especially if he will lose his world title.
Well, he raised $34 million for his company, right. So he's doing pretty good.
But let me ask you this: so, in your opinion, one little girl can go ahead against all tennis establishments, all media establishments, all the other tennis players, because the tennis players are not stupid. They're getting really for being nobodies who don't know anything except playing tennis, making hundreds of millions of dollars. Look at Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, and others. But there are a lot of people, sometimes somebody is playing a match, let's see, French Open. I never heard the name. So I look up the name on the internet or so on. Oh, this guy, he already made $12.5 million. A little nobody that nobody knows his name, he's already made $12 million. And so do you think that these people, because of Naomi Osaka, will say, no, we are with her. We are not going to play in all these grand slam tournaments and so on. You know what's going to happen? They will make just more qualifying matches. They will still hold the Grand Slam. They will probably reduce prizes. And what's going to happen with all this? Okay, Djokovic, I don't care about this caliber players. They have enough money for the next several generations. But those little players who made only $12.5 million, those who made only $2 million, believe it or not, there are some players who made only $2 million.
Or even less. Yeah,
No,
right.
I hear what you're saying.
But
I
see,
agree
the
with
thing
you.
is, it's a fundamental right to speak or not to speak. On advice of counsel, I'm going to exercise my Fifth Amendment right not to speak.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
she should not be forced
Hey,
to speak.
Nick
Wait,
and
wait, wait,
Sasha,
wait.
Nick and Sasha,
You're
just really
all
quickly.
right if there wouldn't be a contract. You are absolutely right, 100%.
Right. Yeah,
Not
sure.
probably
But
more.
part of the problem, as I
There's a
said earlier,
contract. There's
Yeah, but the problem is the bargaining power of the contract. In other words,
no,
it's an adhesion contract. It's a contract that the tennis world says you sign it or you don't play. Here are the terms and conditions. Okay, regardless whether you agree it or not. So the thing is,
So
it
why
goes
did
back
you
to the
sign?
evil tennis organization.
But wait a sec.
Yeah,
She signed the contract, yet she forfeited this tournament. She
that's
drew
right.
out of the tournament. So,
Yeah.
that's a double jeopardy. So she's
Con-
still okay.
con-
If she just simply wouldn't play in the tournament, that's fine. But she did sign a contract,
Hey,
yet she didn't
contract
play
void,
tournament.
contract breach, contract void. I mean, breaching contracts take place all the time, Sasha. I mean, it's
So,
normal. There's a contract, you sign it. She breached it. I don't know if
okay.
there's any damages.
However,
From that.
one
Maybe
thing
not.
she did very noble thing though. She did withdraw from the tournament herself.
Right.
She
Yeah,
didn't
she
wait
withdrew.
until she would be thrown out of the tournament. She withdrew herself.
Yeah,
Okay,
right. She did
honor
right.
I agree.
her.
But Nick and Sasha and I would definitely agree with what y'all are saying. Is as I'm continuing to read, it does look like this has been an issue for a while, even before the pandemic, because they were saying that apparently Pam Shriver, who is actually a tennis player that I admired when she played, served as president of the Women's Tennis Association from 1991 to 1994 when it functioned as a players' organization. But even that wasn't really a union and everything. And she was actually saying that the most powerful potential union for a new entity would be one that was both men and women. So she was
Yeah.
actually arguing for this back in a few years back. So like even before the
Right.
pandemic and everything. So it seems like this is something that has been going on for a while, and definitely they recognize, the women do, that some of the changes that they've had have been because of the male union that has been out there, and apparently they meet regularly, but the women have not been meeting regularly
Well,
at all.
you know what she should do. She should go to all three organizations, negotiate her own individual contract, be denied by all three because they're all a monopoly, and then sue the bejeevers out of them for billions of dollars for antitrust violations, which is what they are. They're basically a monopoly, and also all the TV programs that back this big monopoly, because this is what happens when you get a huge, powerful organization against an individual that should have the right. Now, how could they solve it? Real simple. You don't have to show up and speak. You're there to play tennis. However, we'll give you bonuses if you do speak. In other words, pay them to speak if they want, because it's all about ratings. All it is about, hey, if Djokovic gets on afterwards, ESPN picks it up, they watch it, people watch more of it, we get our ratings up, then we can sell more advertisers. That's all it's about. It's just a greed play. So the thing is, but she has, and probably it's not just her. Who knows how many other tennis players have phobias speaking in front, and they're continually being, it's their way or the highway. Marshawn Lynch was one of them for the
No, I would
Seattle
argue it's
Seahawks.
not.
I don't know if
Yeah,
you
it's
remember
not just
that.
tennis players. It's all kinds of players. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I've always said that they need to do on a regular basis, it comes back to, once again, your favorite topic, education, and the things that we can do to improve the education system is, even when they're in college, because I've seen some of these athletes, and it's not a race thing, because I've seen some that
Sure.
are of all
It's
ethnicities,
a
all
greed
races, and
thing.
everything else,
Where
and
is
they've got
Vladimir
to learn.
Ulanov?
You
Where is
already
They've got
said
to learn
Vladimir?
how
today
to.
several times one phrase, improving education system. You know
Right.
how you improve your education system? You burn it. and start completely new educational system. This is your educational system. Just burn it and don't even mention that.
Something Sasha and I could actually agree upon.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing on that. And we actually got to get ready to wrap up. But one of the things I
Right.
was going to say is that we can also get folks to learn about public speaking. I'm actually thinking that they need to, that, we need to create a speakers bureau that teaches folks how to speak. That me and you and Sasha and Steve will run, so they can drop a nice little check to us, and we will teach them how to speak, whether they're in the NFL, the
Absolutely.
tennis
They actually have
association.
Dale's credit.
Mark, it would be great to teach somebody who's making $50 million to say a couple of words. That's so funny. They don't have any phobias when it comes to go to the bank to cash this
Okay.
check.
You know what she should do, and you should see this. It happens with all the people that are high profile. She sits down with her lawyer. Okay, I don't know if you've seen this. Okay, on all these things, Mark. The minute there is a Black Lives Matter issue or there's whatever issue, they always sit down with their attorney and they turn it over to their lawyer and let their lawyer speak. That would be interesting. I think that's what she should do, and get a dynamic lawyer that just rails on the tennis community and threatens them with a multi-billion-dollar antitrust suit.
And in the
That'll shut
meantime,
them up.
there will be enough people who will sue this
So,
lawyer.
so anybody that's listening, if I'm hearing you correctly, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing this correctly. So everybody that's watching and hearing this, even in what my friend Brian calls team replay. So I want to make sure that we're getting this correct. Nick Palveda is making himself available to be the lawyer for Naomi Osaka, and therefore he will use the money that Naomi is going to pay to fund the network. Am I hearing you correctly?
Well, no, unfortunately, I can't do that.
Let me just tell
At
you
the same
this.
time, it is a great idea.
Okay, there are three kind of people who are making more money than any other professions. They are professional athletes.
They are doing well.
And
Yeah.
players comes to mind. Entertainers.
They're doing well financially. Yeah, top.
Even Donald
entertainers.
Trump did
Right.
well as an entertainer.
Right.
Okay? And the third category are stock traders. Now,
some of
out of
the
these
industrial
three
reactors.
categories, there are three categories that are making far much more money than any other profession, including lawyers and doctors and everybody else.
Well,
There is a catch. You take, let's see, accountants. Even lousy accountant will bring home $75,000, maybe even more if he's lucky. Same thing with lawyers and same thing with others. They're still able to make a little bit of money by miracle, but somehow they have an ability. Now, with athletes, entertainers, and stock traders, only the best. It's like a pyramid. When
It is a pyramid,
top of the pyramid, they're cleaning billions of dollars in
Right.
some cases.
That's right.
But there is all different levels where people make hardly any money at all.
Mhm.
So those people who are on the top of the pyramid, they have all abilities to find the best doctors, the best therapists, the best of the best in the world to help themselves if they indeed have some problems. In my opinion, it's all phony. She did not have any problems talking about Black Lives Matter and I'm Black and I'm Asian and I'm this and I'm that. Oh, probably she was given an advice to shut up. And once that happened, she lost any interest to public speaking and she became shy, she became introverted, and there are all these little problems here and there. So stop playing and just go away, treat yourself if you can, and if don't, then have a good life. You have $50 million. Okay? Good luck.
I hear what you're saying, and I know you're to wrap up. Like I said that a few minutes ago. Well, one thing, I know that there are some youth activists, and definitely she was considered one of those as well. And even they sometimes go through some depressions and things of that nature, because I've known some of the ones locally here who do not have that kind of money. So they pulled back from some of their activism because of some depressions and things that they were suffering. So definitely that I've seen even on our local level here in North Carolina and all of that. And you actually brought up a good point, and that's what I'm going to use to close it out and everything, which is the fact that, yes, if we're talking elite athletes and elite entertainers, yes, they get paid a whole lot of money, and I mean a whole heap of a lot of money. But in terms of the percentage, we're talking about, you talk about that 1% or whatever they talk about in terms of society. It might be less than that in terms of those that are actually participating. So we might be talking about point 0.5 or 0.5% of how the folks that are actually involved in that elite level. And there's so many others that are not. And a lot of times that's even where some of the economic divide comes to, because so many athletes and others go through life trying to make that success level of the entertainers, and some of them don't have the skill, some of them don't have the luck, because it also requires a whole lot of luck in order to get to that level and everything, and therefore they don't do the other things that they should do in order to be prepared for the life of the common man, and I'll just put it that way, and therefore they're not definitely ready for it when it happens, and some of them even go into criminal things of that nature. So not something I'm a big fan of, but that's what happens. So definitely that's just what goes on in the world, and I would urge folks to understand what they're getting into, even if they get involved in sports at a young age, because your chance of making it are not all that great. Go ahead and play, and if you can become the next LeBron James, or if you can become the next Michael Jackson, go for it. But at the same time, understand what you're getting into, and also be prepared for what you're getting into,
Okay,
and learn the different
Naomi,
skills.
with all due respect, Naomi had luck and she has skills. She has everything. She wanted to become something else. She wanted to become larger than life figure who has her opinion about Black Lives Matter and about probably the indigenous Indians and about almost any other aspects. No, we don't need the opinion of 20 years old girl about all very complicated and mature subjects. We don't need. She is, in a way, she's an entertainer. All she is, she's an entertainer. It's fun to watch her playing tennis on a very high level. It's fun to see her or watch her interviews or press conferences, but she's depriving us from the press conferences. Why? If I'm spending my time and organizers are paying millions of dollars in prizes or so on, how come one player signing contract and then can say, well, you know what, I don't want to do this post congress? Why? Do it. Talk about Black Lives Matter or any other subject, whatever you can come up with, and just enjoy. Or don't sign a contract. Or
I hear what you're saying,
renegotiate.
Sasha. And like I said, I'm going to ready to wrap it up for sure on this one. But the last point that I will make is that throughout history, athletes, including some young athletes, have made some very powerful statements in using their platform. I think about the 1969 Olympics and the Black Power salute. I think about Muhammad Ali. I think about a number of other athletes and entertainers that have used their platform to make a statement. And some of them
Well,
were young and they were dealing with different issues at the time. So whether she wants to do that with Black Lives Matter, or whether others want to do it around the LGBT issues or others, I have no problem with that, because I think that they have earned the right by having the platform, because they didn't have the platform when they were nobodies. So like I
so
said, they've got the platform.
Mark, what you're saying is that definitely she deserves platform. So when she can talk about things what on her mind, she's using platform.
Right.
So she is very selfish person that she's using platform to issues that interest her, but sign contract with organizers and say a couple of nice things. Nobody asking you to talk for 4.5 hours. All you just say that I had a good match today or I didn't have a good match today, and that's about it. You can answer 2-3 questions and finish with all. But she has her ego absolutely astronomical in size. She believes that she's exceptional person, that she's on top of the world, and she can do and say if and where and how she wants, with complete disregard of a contract that she signed, and depriving millions of tennis fans to listen to her post-match conference. That's just not right.
I hear what you're saying. And like I said, on as we get ready to go into the world edition, like the video that we show at the beginning, at the end, the thing that I would add to that is that we have to figure out what was actually in that contract. Because if there was a no speak clause, then you're absolutely right. So, like I said, there are some contracts that actually have what you can speak on and what you cannot speak on, and all of that. But I've not seen the contract. I don't know. Maybe Sasha's seen it, but
Mark,
we're gonna go try to find the contract right now. Let's get on out of here.
Nick, no, I haven't seen the contract, but maybe Nick could bring this issue to the lawyers then and see what other legal minds would say on that. In the meantime, very soon we are going to have the investment show, the financial show, where we will discuss very interesting things today. And as I said before, stock traders are highly paid profession. However, you have to learn and understand what you are doing, because instead of making money, you may end up losing money. And that's what we are trying to make the rule number one: preservation of capital.
No
Once
doubt
you
about
learn
that.
that, then you can do more.
Yep. And on the online dinner party, we're actually going to have some entrepreneurs come in. So we'll see what they've got to say as well, because I know one of them actually developed a cartoon character. So she'll be coming in to talk about the cartoon character that she developed. And there'll be some other guests coming as well. So on that note, we'll go catch you later. Sasha will catch you on the investment show, and I'll catch you at 4 o'clock at the online dinner party.
Thank you very much.